Maybe you're familiar with the public broadcasting show, The Victory Garden. It's the longest running TV gardening show ever. It's been on continuously since 1975. You know, the Victory Garden, it's absolutely beautiful. The plants are big and they're full, and the soil is black and it's rich. It's a kind of an Eden, the Victory Garden. It's the kind of place that can make any gardener excited and dream about what might happen in their own backyard. What a lot of people don't realize, though, I think, is that the Victory Garden was originally a parking lot. I mean, all pavement and gravel and puddles of oil. A parking lot. It's interesting, isn't it, how something so beautiful can be brought from something that was so, utilitarian. And when they tore up the pavement there of the Victory Garden, the soil was compacted and heavy with clay. It was not a kind of good place for cultivation. It was quite a transformation. Well, welcome to my own little Victory Garden. It's mid-November here at the parsonage, and you can see that we've been mulching heavy, getting ready for the frost and for the freeze. It's getting colder outside. Most of the leaves are down. These little pink flags represent new plants that we put in this year. And we're hoping that we'll be able to find them here in next spring. Maybe they'll pop back up out of the snow. We're hoping so. When we moved here a couple of summers ago, there were no flowers. None. Sarah has really worked hard at dividing and planting and tending. This was just a bare slope. No grass would even grow here. Any seed that was planted would just wash away. We're making progress. We had here on the north side of the house a whole bunch of canna lilies growing this year. They were as tall as the eaves of the house. We've had to cut them down by now, but we're hoping we can leave them here this winter. Since they're up next to the house, we're hoping that they won't freeze. You can see that they're mulched heavy. If you dig in here a little bit, and you can look, you can see that the bulbs are still growing in the ground. If you've ever grown canna lilies before, you know that they're very satisfying plants to grow. Not only do they get big, they multiply. Every year they increase in numbers. 3, 4, 5-fold the size and the number that they were the year before. They're kind of the evangelists of the garden. This year we plan to check in here at the parsonage throughout the year to see how the garden is doing, see what's growing and what's not. You know, Jesus and other authors of the Bible used a lot of kind of agricultural metaphors or gardening metaphors to talk about God and God's interaction with the people. Maybe fall seems like an odd time to start filming a series of videos about the garden because, well, the garden is over for the year, right? But I think a lot of gardeners will tell you that fall is really the beginning of the next year's garden in many ways. As plants go dormant, fall is the time when we do a little bit of assessment. When we think about what has worked well for us this year and what didn't work so well. Fall is the time that we start formulating plans and adjusting for next year. Maybe we move some plants around. Maybe we start preparing the soil as we look ahead for next spring. Maybe we decide to do some pruning. The seed catalogs will be coming in the mail soon, and it's the time of the year that gardeners start to think ahead and start to dream big. Jesus knew that fall did not equate to finished. He knew that fall and winter were really the seed beds of new life and new growth. He knew that dying had a way of giving way to new life. John's Gospel tells the story of one time about a week or so before Jesus' death. Some Greeks, some Gentiles made their way into Jerusalem for the Passover feast. And they had heard of Jesus before, so they wanted to meet him. And so they found some of the disciples and they asked for an introduction. But the disciples came to Jesus and they said, hey, there are these guys here in Jerusalem and they would like to meet you. But instead of setting up a meeting, Jesus used this announcement that there were that there would-be disciples in Jerusalem. He used that as an opportunity to start talking about his own death. And he told his disciples, soon, he said, the time has come that the Son of Man is to be crucified. And he said, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it just remains a single grain. But if it falls and dies, it might take root and it'll grow and it'll produce all kinds of new seeds. And so it'll spread and it'll bear much fruit. But it requires it letting go first. And even a kind of a dying that leads to a transformation of a new kind of life. Jesus is doing an interesting thing here. He's using what I think theologians might call a liminal image. It's a word picture where one state of being or one condition bleeds over or it crosses over into a new state of being or a new condition. In this case, he's talking about death crossing over into life. And so this image of the falling seed, Jesus is saying that for something new to be created, something of the former self has to give way. Something of the former self has to die and be put to rest. Of course, Jesus is talking about himself. He seems to know that just in the next week or so he will be on the cross and he'll lose his life in that way. Something has to fall and die before it can be resurrected to new life. But Jesus is also talking about something else. He's talking about the church, and he's talking about our mission too, and he's talking about each one of our hearts. We need to remember that the backdrop for this whole conversation was that there were some Greeks, some Gentile would-be disciples who had made their way into Jerusalem, and they wanted to come and find Jesus. Remember, there's no throwaway details in the Bible. The fact that the story is set up by this fact is important. You see, Jesus didn't come just to save Jews, although initially his ministry seemed to be restrained or constrained to just Jewish people. But the goal all along, the plan from the very beginning, is that his message of good news, his hope of salvation would be spread beyond that small group of people and be spread across the land to folks of all kinds. And so word had gotten out. And these Gentile disciples made their way. They came to Jerusalem. They came looking for Jesus. And Jesus received this fact as a clear indication that his time had come, that it was time for the former things to be put away, and it was time for something new to begin. A time for all kinds of people outside of Jerusalem and outside of Jews, that all people would receive this hope and this message of restoration, and this message of healing, and this message of salvation. All varieties of people need Jesus, Jews and non-Jews alike, and he knew that his time had come. But for this new thing to bear fruit, something had to be sacrificed first. In order for something to be resurrected to new life, something had to die. This is just how it works. A child doesn't become her own little person until she's willing or able to break the necessary bonds that she has with her mother. One form of that relationship has to give way and die for a new kind of connection to take place. A church doesn't grow and bear new fruit and branch out by clinging desperately to its past. Something has to give way for us to bear new fruit. Jesus' message of love and new life, it isn't able to take root and grow in our hearts unless we're willing to risk enough, unless we're willing to trust enough that we would grow new branches and grow in new areas. Gardens are places of hope and potential. What was once a hard and cold parking lot can be transformed into a victory garden that's admired by all. And God works unimaginable good in the lives of people who can risk enough and who can trust enough, who are willing to die to our own purposes and be nurtured under God's care. Fall represents the first step toward this venture of new life. We give thanks for what was, but we look forward to what may be. There's hope and there's gratitude in the cold air, in the ingathering of the leaves. Fall is an exciting time, really. A time of laying to rest, but a time of preparing for new life as well. I look forward to seeing what may happen here in our own little victory garden this year. This year I'm hoping for more tomatoes. I'm hoping for more and new kinds of flowers. I'm hoping to get a handle on whatever bug it is that destroys the zucchini. I'm looking forward to putting in a new shade garden. This winter, as you rest and you hunker down to protect yourself from the cold, may God plant within you a new seed of hope. And may you understand that God, the gardener of souls, has great things in store for your life yet. And may you dream and plan big, knowing that within you there is beauty yet to bloom, and goodness yet to share, and greenness yet to soak up the Son of God. May this winter be for us the seedbed of new life, and may each day we establish a little bit of the victory garden.